Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. A life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Grace Life, everyone. My name's Jen. I am your hostess for the evening. And with me, as always, we got Brian and Hello. Hey, guys.
Hey, shalom.
The gang's back in the house. With that intro, all I could think of Kermit the Frog opening the the curtains and just going absolutely ape. For we.
Yeah. I use that GIF quite a bit, where it's just Kermit, where he's just doing the yay thing and flailing about. Yeah,
completely all I could think of.
Right,
he's a classic little green dude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What else can you say?
Exactly. So, who would like to start us off this week?
Well, let me think.
I'll go. I'm happy to go.
Well, sure, you have to anyway by show rules.
Yes, it's true.
Right.
Yeah, as before the show, I brought up something because I couldn't remember if I talked about it. So I'm like, okay, it's been that long.
Yep.
Yeah, when you find out that your former bandmate and your dentist is suddenly in the paper for domestic abuse and violence in front of his children, and you still haven't put out your album with that he's all over, and your lead singer is on the board of directors of a women's advocacy organization, and he's also your dentist, and you had an appointment. There's a lot of soul searching that occurs suddenly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was tough just because I really do want to be, I do want to be compassionate to anybody because people were compassionate with me and gave me a chance, and I had an opportunity to change my life. And so I'd like everyone else to have that opportunity as well. But there are certain things that I would call hard limits, or like some people might have said that if they stopped going, because my dentist is he runs his own practice, that him being quite conservative also would say that he's that the retaliation is, there's a political term for that I don't need to use, but I thought about, I have also a political term. It's called zero tolerance to certain things.
Right.
Yeah.
But the, for me, it was about that his business is more than just him. It's his staff. And so I decided to go. I went to my dentist and had a visit, and now they're going to be with new people because my former bandmate has some legal issues ahead of him and some quite serious ones. And the thing that kills me the most is just his kids, because I have connected with his daughter, and she and I would trade off Christmas hats at Christmas time with gigs and everything, and she's just really sweet, and it just kills me that she had to experience that.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what the trauma is. They're young, they're not. She's almost a teenager, but not quite. And her little brother is a child.
Yeah.
So it's been tough, and for our band, it was just a no-brainer. It was tough because we've done a lot of work on this, and this goes back a bunch of years that we still don't have an album out, and now it's like erase, delete, not a question,
Right.
nothing, not not even a question.
Really? What do you do at that point? Like, do you just have like a new guitarist or you or somebody play those parts and just finish the album, or do you just kind of scrap it and do new stuff?
We'll have somebody else record stuff. Okay. Either it'll be me or the guy that's mixing it. He's a great musician as well. We thought we had a guitar player that we were working with that was the first night he came in and played. I'm like, this guy's perfect. He can play all the solos. Because I've realized that I have a very distinctive style, and I have a very distinctive style of what I think a song should sound like, and I don't feel like it is in the same line as everybody else. I get lucky every once in a while by contributing something, but it's like we had this guy come in, audition, bit of an older gentleman, hadn't actually played live with a band in a long time, and he crushed it. Like his soloing style, everything was like, right away I'm like, I could use you to replace every single guitar solo that we have.
Yeah.
Like no question about it. And it would sound good. He had a good sound and a good approach. But I don't think he's not going to be playing with us because we just have a huge repertoire of music at this point, and it's a lot. But I want to see if we can still maybe get him to record a little bit. But we'll see. And then along with that, my coworker at work is being lazy again and just vanishing and disappearing. And like I actually left work early one day because I walked into the office and I'm like, I'm leaving before I blow up. Boom. And in the 4 weeks that followed, the GM did nothing.
Oof.
Nothing. Even explained why I left early.
Wow.
What's going on? I'm like, this is what's going on. Nothing. And it doesn't get any better,
Yeah.
Like, this is his habit. And finally I just got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I don't care. If I do not have the authority to deal with it, somebody else does. It's their problem. It's not mine. I will just keep doing my thing. And it was like this last Thursday, I got into work and one of my other coworker asked what was going on. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, and I said right in front of the GM and our bookkeeper, I'm like, he's useless. It doesn't matter. And I will just continue to do what needs to be done around here.
Yeah.
And then finally my coworker talked to the GM and pushed him like, you need to do something. And he came and apologized for me for saying something. I'm like, no, it needed to be said because I got an issue with the supervisor as well. Right. It's like, it's yeah. So he's like, can we talk after lunch? I'm like, sure. I was just like, he needs supervision all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what's happening. You're not getting a board report from me this week because I'm doing the job that the guy 20 years younger than me should be doing. Yeah, it was quite frustrating, but it was also just, again, to shape it around to challenges and applying the tools. The main part was like there was day where I ignored him, and I'm like, this doesn't help. I don't have to ignore him. I don't have to engage with him, but I can also, act normally, which I've always been able to do. If I've ever had a conflict at work, I've never let it affect me at all.
Yeah.
Because we still have to work. And if there's something I need to get accomplished, I'm going to go have a conversation with that person, even if we just blew up a couple minutes ago.
Yes.
And if they can handle it, great. If they can't, well, not my problem. And so it was a lot of, and it's the same thing that's going on with my neighbor. My new neighbors are just, it's just frustrating. And it was like getting to the point of like, there's, it's that always reminder myself, people who don't take care of business, karma eventually comes in and does its job. It may take years, but it always happens. It's always happened in my experience. And so therefore I don't need to, they will rent some space in my head every once in a while, but for the most part, they don't have to. And I have to catch myself when I do. I start getting too focused on, because it's like all I can do. And that's what it was all about, acceptance. It's just accepting the person for who they are, accept my neighbors for who they are. The things that I can do is there's some city codes that they're violating, and I've made the city aware of those. And that's it. That's all I can do. Then I'm going to give the city some time, and if nothing changes, then I'm going to take the next step. But as far as the rest of it goes, it doesn't matter. People get to be who they want to be.
Yeah.
And if that means either being a non-productive coworker or an obnoxious neighbor, or just more of the same, which is basically what it is. So I live next to Brian was a public nuisance, and the new group isn't any better. So unfortunately. But with all that said, life's pretty freaking good right now. I'm like, there's some big projects at work that are coming up that could be stressful, but ready for it. And the snow could just, go take a flying leap at this point. Right. Like, it just keeps snowing. Just unbelievable. At least now it's pretty much melting off as soon as it comes down. But there's just so much snow. Like, it's just, there's so much. And yeah, the music thing kind of, I guess in a lot of ways, I'm in a transitional period. As you go from winter into spring at work, we're transitioning. And, it always feels like that too with the time change. And, you're all of a sudden sitting at home kind of going, wow, it's still light out,
Yeah.
And, I haven't been super diligent with my organizing, but I have maintained, get downstairs, grab a box, haul it out, Oh, and then the really amazing thing, and I know you've seen it, was fixing that. So when I got angry at work and I left, I went home and I took all that energy and put it into fixing my dad's old reel-to-reel player. And once that was working, I found that tape of me and him singing together.
That is so cool, man. You're gonna put that somewhere digitally, right, to further protect that file, right?
Yeah, it's in my laptop.
Okay.
And I listened to the rest of it, and what's cool about it, I just scanned it, is there's a whole bunch more of like where my sister's still a baby. I've got to be about like 3 maybe. But later on, it's my sister and I singing Christmas carols together, and we're much older.
Oh, that's cool.
We're still kids. So I guess my dad used to do is, and I found one today actually, he would record us and put it on like these tiny little reels. They're like 2 inches, and then he was sending them to my uncle and my cousins, because my cousin said that they always look forward to it every year.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. and in that particular recording, I mentioned, or my dad mentions my grandfather. So my grandfather died when I was, I think, about 3 or 4. So that's how I figured I placed the age.
Okay.
And yeah, my cousin said that they would look forward to it every year. So I found actually one of those little tape reels today when I was doing some more clearing. And I also found, my mother said that she thought that there was a musical I did with the church group. And evidently I was the lead, which I was like, I was? I mean, I remember the music. And it's funny, I looked up the production because I finally found it. And it's something that you know, like, especially the big churches that have like the bands and everything like that, they're doing it still today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So there's like all the music and lyrics online. But the thing with my dad, what I'm going to do, so the creepy thing about it was anyone that's heard me sing, some people actually thought my dad was me.
Oh, wow.
Except it's Estonian.
Right.
But anyone that's heard me sing like a recording recognized that's where I got my voice from.
Ah, okay.
And it was a trip.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right? Because I've heard my dad sing, you know, like we're in church or something like that. But that's different than hearing him softly singing into a microphone. And it was like, it was kind of crazy. So what I want to do is I'm actually learning. My mother told me what song it is so I could get the lyrics. And I'm going to record myself singing along with that.
Oh, nice.
Oh, so cool.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been practicing a little bit with it. But you know, had my birthday a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I've gotten out and have some fun. Went out throwing axes for the first time. That was really a blast. And what else we do? Just been kind of last few weekends going out of town, and what's really cool is financially totally holding my stuff together, which I was super psyched about because I got a raise this year, but I wasn't quite sure how things were going. I was doing some debt consolidation, just leftovers from my, you know, from dental work and some gear I bought. And I've been kind of going, you know, can I afford to get a new car? And this last month or so, I've been like, okay, I've been going out to dinner, you know, done some hotel rooms, and I'm doing good. It's like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
like really, it's a little shocking, to be honest. Like I'm not used to it. And I'm not sabotaging it, which is usually my thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, good thing. Let's mess it up.
Right.
And I'm not. I'm actually kind of holding true to this. Like it's what Neil had a great suggestion. He's like, take the money that you'd think you'd want to have as a car payment, and just put it in your savings account every month, and see what it's like.
Right.
You know, and see, can you afford it, and what's left if you did that?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. Now I haven't done that, but I've been tracking. You know, I've been tracking what I've been spending, and what I have before the next paycheck, and I'm just like, hey, this might work, and it's just good to finally be there and to know that I know that by the end of the year, like. By the end of this year, like next year, I can buy a new car. Hands down, no questions. As long as I don't screw up my job.
Right.
As long as I keep my job.
Right.
But I can. And I mean, legitimately afford it. Whereas in the past, it was just something I wanted.
Right.
And I didn't care what the ramifications were. And now it's something that I can actually plan for.
Well, and a car's an easy thing to do that with, I would think, too, right? Because you can justify it easily. Hey, you know, I need it. The winters are bad here. I got, you know, like you can find reasons. It's not like I don't know, like even, I know you can justify anything, but like a car, if you tell other people, they'll typically agree with you. Well, you do have to have a safe blah, 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 and you got this, and yeah, that makes sense, right? Whereas if you were like, hey, I'm looking at this $10,000 guitar, a lot of people be like, why do you need this guitar? But a car, most people, I mean, unless you're going like crazy high end, you're like, I'm thinking about getting a Bugatti,
And I'm getting that snowball effect where I'm finding myself being a little more accountable and using the tools. Like I went to Salt Lake City to see an old friend of mine, and while I was there, I was going to pick up a new bass amp. And what's really funny is I actually make money as a bass player.
Yeah.
Like I actually have a lot of gigs every year, and I'm still using this kind of crummy old amp that I bought a few years ago. And it's always been my thing. Like I earn my instruments. It's like when I've earned this, I get it. Now I bought some basses, and that's part of it was my debt stuff. I got a couple of nice basses, but I have not bought a new amp at all. And finally, I'm like, okay, you need a new amp, because we did a couple gigs last year where I'm like, what I had was not enough. And so while I was there, I picked up a new amp, and it was great. But while I was in the store, I looked across and I saw this dark blue guitar that is it was a guitar style that was very popular in the 80s with the hair bands. And I see the guitar, and it's got baby blue polka dots all over it. And I was like, oh, this is not fair. This is so not fair.
It's the forbidden apple. Yeah.
Oh, it was, and I'm like, and I know it's not that expensive. The brand isn't like, it's not like one of those where you see the price tag and you're like, nope, not going to happen. It's like, yeah. Right. And so,
which makes it even harder.
Oh yeah.
Because again, if it was like $15,000, you'd be like, nah, man, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's like $1,500, you're like, I can figure that out.
Talking like $800 or $900, and it's polka dots. I sent a text message to Neil. I said, see the picture, and he's like, "Oh, did you get it?" I'm like, "No, I'm texting you to help you."
Yeah, you're like, dude, when I text you, you're supposed to. Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to tell me no.
Yeah. So we talked me out of it, and and then of course, like the other day, I've gotten these emails from, because I use Apple products, and it's like, now, MacBooks $500 off. And I'm like, oh, I so want one of these.
Right.
I'm like, no, but I don't need it right now.
Right.
It'll be there for me in 6 months when I need it. And the same thing with the guitar. I'm doing a guitar gig this summer. And when we get into the gig and we're, getting closer, if this instrument really is going to make a difference, I can buy it, but I don't need it now.
Right.
And so I'm getting a little bit of that, like I said, that snowball effect where things get better and they feel better, and it kind of gets you back into shape. And I think a lot of that is, it's always an inside job, and I should be able to do this even when things aren't easy. But it's a lot easier when things are really easy. I mean, it's like I've gotten myself into a better financial position, and all I can say is it's hard work. I've got it by doing hard work.
Yeah.
And like, money doesn't solve money problems, but having that little bit extra sure makes it a little bit easier to do what you need to do.
Right. And especially if something does go a little wrong and you've got a few bucks, you can absorb a little easier, and that peace of mind is worth so much.
Yeah. And it is. It's when you're constantly getting hit with the next thing and the next thing, and I forgot about this and I forgot about that. Yeah. It really is hard to just, go, hey, it's just an inside job, and keep the positive attitude. It's like, no.
Right. Well, and
tried.
I don't know if you saw, like, a recent study that was released shows that, people actually are saying that money is buying happiness now, because it's not that it truly buys you happiness, but it buys you peace of mind, because it gives you less worry. So when you have less worry, it's easier to be a little happier.
Yeah, and that's we were talking before the show about pressure relief groups, and that's something I did with Debtors Anonymous, which is I sat down with two other members of the 12-step program that have successfully gone through the program, and I laid out all my finances, everything. I mean, and what was cool is I was loading up on all the liabilities. And what's great about a pressure relief group is they're also there to remind you that you have assets as well. Yeah. And that you have, and part of that is to get you out of that negative space.
Yeah.
And the pressure relief groups are really important. And so, that's what that was the best thing I learned from that, was that the negative headspace doesn't make it any better. And that you do need to look at where you have opportunities and where you do have something that, no, that wasn't, like my retirement wasn't originally intended to pay off a bunch of my debt a while ago.
Yeah.
But it was there.
Right.
And I needed to be reminded that I had made the effort to put money, towards retirement. And so it's there, and I was able to tap into it and relieve some of that pressure.
Right.
And that's why I think it's not an easy thing to lay out all of your financials to complete strangers.
Yeah, I bet.
But it was so enlightening and so helpful, and I would recommend it to anybody, because these people had the right way of looking at it where I didn't.
Yeah, and they really are coming from a place of kindness.
Yep.
Like, even though
love and compassion,
the words may not seem like it, like some of the words may be tough to swallow, but that's the intent is all good to really help you. So it's similar. Going to the dentist. It might suck for a little bit, but eventually, you're like, hey, I don't have that pain anymore, that broken tooth or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's been kind of going on with me.
Well, speaking of broken tooth,
that's right. You had one, didn't you?
I did, yeah, and I had it taken out week and a half ago. Yeah, about a week and a half ago, and finally, and everything went, pretty well and everything, and it was funny. Did I talk about this last time, Jen? I don't remember.
You talked to Brett briefly.
Okay, because I had a dentist that was so apologetic. It was so, she's so nice. It's kind of funny, like every little thing. If she knew it was going to hurt a little bit, she apologized first. Like you're gonna feel a little pinch. I'm so sorry. And then the poke of the needle in your cheek. And she was like that with everything. And she's going through and different stuff, and and I'm just like, I'm good. Just do what you got to do, kind of a thing, And she kind of laughed, and it was like, I get it though, because I'm sure they deal with enough people that whole process is traumatic. Like it doesn't matter what it is, cleaning, filling, tooth extraction, whatever it is. Just for some people, the dentist chair is such a source of anxiety, and I'm fine. I'm sitting in there and I'm like, whatever, I'm, just do what you got to do. But afterwards, she said they had to do a surgical extraction because of the way it was broken. There wasn't any really good part. She couldn't really grab any part of the tooth to get it out. So she had to cut it out, basically. And she said, that I'd have pain for an extra few days because of that. I'm like, okay, no big deal. And then, like, over the weekend, I had it done on a Monday or a Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. And over that weekend, it was like this really bad, dull ache that just wouldn't stop.
Ooh.
And I looked it up on...
I know that one.
Yeah, and I looked it up online, and I'm like, oh, man, I hope I don't have dry socket. And I talked with a friend of mine, and he was like, I don't think you do. He's like, dry socket hurts. He's like, it's not a dull ache. It's more painful than that. And I was like, okay. And I looked at the area, and I'm like, well, everything looks good, and I was, doing what they had told me to, to flush it with salt water and everything. And so Monday, it was still bugging me. This week, Monday, and I called and was like, or I didn't call. I had an appointment at the facility because, again, pretty much everything I need is in one place, which is still, freaking awesome. But I was like, well, I'm going to run upstairs to the dentist office and just be like, hey, because they told me to take like ibuprofen and Tylenol. And I was like, and I had read online that some dentists will give like a numbing kind of stuff for it. And I was like, I wonder if they'll do that, or if maybe I can just take, a little higher dosage of what I'm taking or something. Because that medicine was not touching it. It wasn't helping at all. And I got up there and it was like 5:30 or 4:30. I'm sorry. And they close at 5. And I'm like, there's no way they're getting me in today, but I'll set something up. I go in, then the dentist walks by, as the girl was talking to me, and he was like, "Come on back." I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." He's like, "If you're in pain, we got to take care of this." So I went back, sat down. You know, he looked and he's like, "Looks like it's healing great." You know, he's like, he's like, the problem I see is he's like, the gums still were pliable, like they still could move a little bit, and he's like, that's what's causing your pain. He's like, because as they move, it's basically like, picture if you had like a cut on your finger and you just kept moving your finger right where the cut was, right? It's like it's going to keep hurting because you're kind of like micro tearing. So he told me, he's like, it looks pretty good. He's like, within a few days, he's like, that pain should probably start to subside. But he gave me, it was funny, on Friday, the week before, my mom was like, you know, she's like, we used to just put clove oil on stuff like that. And I was like, oh, you know, and just never did it. Get in there. He gives me this like syringe with stuff in it. He puts it on there, but they put some gauze in there. And he's like, you should feel relief pretty quick from this. And man, it was too, just a couple minutes. And it broke the pain signal up. And I was like, oh, this is so nice. Because I'd been, you know, for almost a week, I just had that ache that just wouldn't stop. You know, it's so annoying and distracting, like hard to go to sleep because you just, you know, it just bugs you. So, and then he goes, yeah, he's like, this isn't medicine. It's basically just clove oil. And I'm like, that's hilarious. You know, that I ended up going in there and could have just went and got some clove oil. But he told me, he's like, I'm not going to give you any stronger medicine. And he's like, this should work. He's like, if it's bugging you, he's like, just put a little bit of this on there, put some gauze for half an hour so that it kind of stays, you know, so it, you know, gets in the area. And he's like, just keep rinsing it. And at this point, it's not bugging me much. It still hurts a little bit, but it's not anywhere near as bad as it was. So I think it's finally, you know, starting to get closer to normal again, which will be so nice, because the only time I'm noticing anything that hurts is when I'm brushing my teeth. If I get a little too close to it with the bristles and they poke it, then it's still a little, you know, but other than that, it's feeling pretty good. And it's not the whole jaw, like from toward the front of my mouth all the way almost to my ear, it was that dull ache. Now, when it does bother me, it's kind of just in the area of where the tooth was. So, yeah, good times.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. I will say this, though. You know, I'm glad the tooth's gone. I'm just glad to be done with that part of it. You know, because the way it was broken, it was hard to floss and food kept getting in there. And it's just I kept biting the inside of my cheek, you know, because it was jagged and all that. So I'm just glad. The weird part now is that, you know, when you bite, like where it is, you know, it's kind of in the bite range. Sometimes, like if you're taking a big bite of something like a sandwich or something, and you can feel the gap there. Otherwise, I don't really notice it, you know, because where my tongue hits my teeth, it's not there. It's just that one tooth over from that. So I don't really notice it, but then when I go to take a bite, I'm like, oh, that feels weird. Yeah. So I'm not quite used to that yet, but that, you know, whatever. That's no big deal. It's just the weirdness of that. Also, you know, when your mouth is closed and you kind of breathe in through your nose, you know, you kind of pull your cheeks in a little bit. And now my cheek goes in that gap a little more than before. You know, it just feels kind of weird. Yeah. It's like I said, it's no big deal. I do have to be aware of when I'm biting a little bit, though, because I have noticed a couple times where, you know, if my bite is a little different now because of that. So, but, you know, that's all just time will fix all that. So, and I had therapy this week, or was it this week? Yeah, it was this week. I've had so many doctor's appointments the last couple weeks. You know, and Jen, did I talk about the new urologist last time?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I finally made a call because my urologist retired. I finally made a call to the place that he recommended, and I found out that the guy that I see usually which was his nurse practitioner, moved to this new place, and I'm like, awesome. Like they've got my files. I can see this guy that I already have a rapport with, so I don't have the new doctor thing to deal with. You know, I probably don't have to go through a whole new exam because he already knows me, basically.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, then I get to the end of it, and of course they don't take my insurance. So, yeah. And I'm like, man. So my doctor's office just gave me a new referral yesterday that's in Toledo, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's over at St. V's, though, which is it's a mess of a hospital. Like, you never know. Like, I got to find out where it's at, because if it's in the hospital proper, it's easy to find. But there's, like, I don't know how to describe it. There's, like, one building off the hospital that's where you want it to be, because it has its own parking, and it's easy to get in and out of, no problem. The hospital itself can be a pain in the butt. And then there's another building, I think, that they have that's really, like, it's the way it's designed is weird. So it can get confusing when you're trying to find where you're going. So I'm hoping it's the one building off by the side, because that's the nice and easy. You just drive up to the place, park, go in that building, and that's it. It's just like an office building, basically. You know, you don't have to deal with the hospital at all. But so I have to call and find out if they take my insurance first of all, and then go from there. So if not, I don't know where I'm going to go. Hopefully there's other places. I know there's more urologists, but it's just a matter of finding one that'll take my insurance. And, of course, it's taking new patients, because, not all of them are doing that. Because there was one that I called, and they're not taking any new patients at the moment. So they do take my insurance, though, of course. Because, of course, it's like the friend that tells you, oh, yeah, you should have called me to help you move,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I moved yesterday. Like, oh, man, I would have totally helped you. I was like, okay. So, yeah, I'll tell you, my heart just sank when the woman was like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't take it. And I was like, why would you, right? Because everything lined up so nice.
Right.
I should have known. No, it happens. I mean, it stinks, but whatever. I had therapy this week. We talked about, I talked to her more about, it was a really interesting talk, because I was talking to her about, like, how you asked me a few shows ago, Jen, when I was talking about, like, getting an ADHD and or autism diagnosis.
Yes.
And you asked me why I needed that.
Mm-hmm.
More so, not so much like why does a person need it, but why do I personally put so much weight in a diagnosis, essentially. And excuse me, and I was telling her about, how I've really found in the communities that I've been part of online that with autism, at least, that self-diagnosis seems to be pretty well accepted, because there's a lot of stigma, that there's a lot of doctors that don't. The rules have changed essentially on autism, but the doctors haven't. So a lot of them are going by outdated things. Like a lot of them won't diagnose somebody as autistic if they can make eye contact. Like that kind of stuff. And,
wow.
And, again, there's a point of it being a spectrum, in that there's some people who absolutely cannot make eye contact. And like I was telling my therapist, I was like, I do okay with eye contact now. And I know, Jen, you can for sure vouch for this. That's not been a strength of mine.
Mm-mm.
I remember when you and I were first dating, and I was always looking anywhere but at you, and I've done that with other people, and they think that I'm not paying attention to them. And it isn't that. It's just, if you told me to stare at, like I told the woman I was talking with, my social worker, I was telling her the same thing. I'm like, if you told me stare at the phone the whole time we're in here, I said I couldn't do it. My eyes,
you were like that when I met you.
Yeah. My eyes, I look all around me. And part of that,
it was a little weird.
Yeah. Part of that
is here, you and I had been on podcasts together.
Yep.
And it was at the lake, right? and you got out of the car, and it felt odd.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you were avoiding.
Yeah.
Like it was noticeable. And it's funny, I remember when it happened, but I just chalked it up to, nerves, anxiety,
which
blah, blah, blah.
Is part of it. Yeah.
It's part of it, but it actually, the body language is very reminiscent of somebody
like that's not, that I'm not really there, and I am. It's just, I that's not been a strength of mine. I've worked on it over the years, because I know for like job interviews and stuff like that, that it's important. A lot of places, if you go into a job interview and you don't look them in the eye, they'll think you don't care a lot of times. Yeah. And it isn't that at all. Like you literally, like I said in school, I wouldn't look at the teacher for most of the class. I'm looking down doodling or I'm staring out the window. But if the teacher called on me, I'd have the answer.
Yeah.
I'm paying attention. And when I'm out in public, I'm listening to like 3 conversations at the same time. And I can tell you what's going on in all of them. It's just an unfortunate thing I've dealt with. But where I am now, I've gotten a lot better because for a long time, what I used to do, I don't know if you remember this, Jen, I used to stare right above the eyebrows because people feel like you're looking them in the eye, but I wasn't looking them in the eye. So it kind of satisfies the body language part of it because I'm looking at you, like directly at you, but I'm not looking you in the eye. So it kind of, that's my meet you halfway kind of scenario, and that has worked quite a bit for me. But over the years, I've tried really hard to, when I'm talking to people, I try really hard to look them in the eye, not the whole time because that's creepy too, but, but at least part of the time. And, and the social worker even was like, yeah, from the first time you came in till now, she's like, you're way better at it. Because she said the same thing you did, Heno. She's like, I noticed when you first came in, you never looked at me. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's not even on purpose. I just do it while I'm sitting there. And I'm sometimes like in public, I feel like it has to do with the anxiety part of it can be that I need to, it's basically like, like if you have a cat, any noise that happens, the cat turns their head or an ear toward the noise. That's kind of what it is. It's a little bit of the squirrel scenario, like, ooh, squirrel, but it's not that I'm not paying attention. It's more that I'm paying too much attention. I'm paying attention to everything. So if something could be a threat, I think I'm trying to look and analyze it instead of accepting you're in a restaurant. Statistically, you're fine.
Yeah.
Could something go wrong? Absolutely. Is it likely to? Not really, but my brain still wants to know where the exit is and all that kind of stuff. Whenever I go into a place, I look for the exits. I analyze stuff like that as, I've tried working on that as well over the years because it's like I said, statistically you're safe, so going back to therapy, we talked about what Jen had asked me, which is why do I need the diagnosis? And I was telling her that I think a lot of it is that I think the diagnosis makes me feel like it's less fraudulent. Because if you get somebody that says you're official, then you go, it's like, it reminds me of The Simpsons when Homer was in a insane asylum. And when he gets released, somebody says, now which one of us is crazy or something like that. And Homer goes, not me. And I can prove it. And he's got a certificate that says not crazy on it, basically, or a stamp on his hand. I can't remember which it is. But that's kind of, I think the thing is that I can then go, oh, I'm officially this. But like I said, in the community, it doesn't seem as important because a lot of, like, I keep seeing jokes from, like, on Instagram accounts. Like, one of them was like, I think a panel of people who are autistic should be the ones to assess people on whether or not they're autistic. They're like, because basically autistic people can see their own people. And they're like, whereas doctors, a lot of times, all they can go on is what you give them. And if you give them certain things, like a lot of doctors with ADHD, if you basically go in there and tell them you didn't have any problems in school as far as your grades go, most of them will just throw you right out. Like they'll go, well, then you don't have ADHD. Because if you did, you wouldn't be able to concentrate. You'd struggle in school, all this stuff. Whereas there's different types of ADHD, and that may not necessarily be true anymore. And similar with autism is that just because you can make eye contact and do feel empathy doesn't mean you're not autistic. I very much feel empathy for other people, but there are other times where I'm as cold as can be. Like I've talked on here where I've talked to my therapist and gone, I didn't feel sad at all. Should I?
I had those conversations before.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like, so when you have those, you're kind of like, it's like, there's like, just because you're not at 100% doesn't mean you aren't, and that's something I'm learning. And basically my therapist, because I told her, I said, I don't know for sure if I'm autistic, but I know for sure that I'm neurodivergent because I check all the boxes basically, or so many of them. And she was like, right. And she goes, why does it matter which word you can use? And I was like, well, again, it goes back to that. I told her, I said, I honestly think it's easier to explain neurodivergence to people than autism because most people don't know what neurodivergence is. So you essentially control the narrative. Whereas if you say I'm autistic, they'll go, well, so-and-so I know is autistic and you're nothing like them, right? Like I have a cousin who has a kid, she's autistic. We're nothing alike, like she is very, 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 like she's more the stereotypical autistic, right? So if you put her and me in the same room with somebody, they'd go, well, if she is, you're not, essentially. Again, not understanding the spectrum concept. So, neurodivergent is easier for me to fall into, I think. And she goes, so why don't you just tell everybody that you're neurodivergent and just be okay with that? And I was like, that's actually a strong point. And, but I was telling her how, again, I've really been letting go of a lot of my past stuff because this is really helping me feel and understand different things about me that I've dealt with over the years, to where it's like for a long time I'm like, God, why is so much wrong with me? And now I'm looking at it a little differently and more of a like, because this root cause causes these things. Like I'm not digging in my head trying to find where my depression comes from. I'm not digging in my head trying to figure out where my anxiety started. Because when I think back to it, I've had anxiety as long as I can remember. I've always been the kid. I always have gotten tummy aches when I get anxious or whatever and wanted to find excuses out of things. And like, I've done that as long as I can remember, once in a while they were legit. Like, when I didn't have to go to camp in elementary school because I got chicken pox. I didn't make anything up on that one. That was just nature intervening and saving me from having to square dance in front of the school. And I still don't regret it. I'd take that chicken pox right on over again. But anyway, so I really felt like we were really kind of doing some good stuff in there and really helping me. And I feel like my self-esteem is raising off of this too, like my worth and everything. And I just don't feel as broken as I did a few months ago. Like, I really think, like, I think I mentioned it before. Like, I really think by my therapist mentioning this to me, it feels like someone took a heavy yoke off of me. Like that I've just been carrying this weight that I didn't deserve. I mean, I put it on myself, but I feel like I've been, I didn't deserve it. And now I'm seeing that. By realizing that I didn't deserve it, I think that's where the self-esteem boost kind of is coming, So, I mean, I'm not saying, new year, new me or anything, but I do in a lot of ways feel so much different than I did just months ago. And it's so nice. And I'm going to keep working on it. Next time I go in, we're going to start talking more about my issues with executive dysfunction. And or whether or not it's that, but it's still I can't start things. And that's been a problem for me for too long now. Like, I've been sitting here looking at, I have 2 tabs on my computer that have been open for, I don't know, a good month and a half now. One is for the Michigan Reconnect program, which allows people 25 and older to go get a college degree, or get your college classes are free. You still have to pay for books and whatever. But the classes themselves are free as long as you're a Michigan resident, have lived here a year and you're over 25, and don't have a previous diploma. Well, I hit all of those things, and I'm sitting here going, why can't I, choose a program to go into? Because that's the main thing that's the sticking point. And the second part is, why can't I just pull the trigger on this and do this? Like, there's no way this harms me in the long run. I've already got a bunch of student debt. I still have to take loans out to get books and stuff, but it's like, whatever. It's all funny money anyway. So,
True.
it's really not, but it's concerning as I get older. But anyway, but in the end, I have a degree that I could use to. I've been having an issue with, feeling like, what do I do if something happens to my mom and blah, blah, blah. Well, that degree would give me at least something that feels like a safety net, even if I did nothing with it right now, So it's like, why, when I can see all those benefits in all of that, did I name a negative?
No.
Right? That's not typically me. Normally I would balance it out. If not weigh it the other way. But, I can see all of the positives of this. I really don't see any negatives to it. And I still can't do it. I just cannot do it. And it's, and I can't figure out what the heck this invisible barrier is for me and this. So that's kind of what I told her I'd like to talk about and start trying to see if we can find something to help me with that. Because it's incredibly frustrating when you can see where you'd like to go, but like I said, there's an invisible wall in front of you. Like you feel like you're a mime in a box, So anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much been it for me, I think. Can't think of anything else. So how about you, Jen?
Oh, well, I mean, I think that's about the best way to sum up the last couple of weeks for me is, well, maybe, okay. It just lots of randomness. Work's going well. I'm actually getting ready to go to Utah at the end of about 3 more weeks or so. Oh, yeah, right. So getting some of that work stuff all tied up and ready to go. So when I'm gone, they can cover for me. So yeah, it's interesting kind of seeing how everything's falling into place, and I'm getting much more comfortable with the being more of a passenger than the actual train leader here. As far as my life decisions and stuff, I've set myself up for some good successes through work, through personal. Now it's time for me to take a little bit of a backseat and coast for a bit and watch things unfold. Because I think if I'm trying to control things too much at this point, it's going to derail a bunch of stuff that I already put into place. So now is the time.
Leaf in the wind.
Yep.
Or
yes.
The better way is a plastic bag in the wind. That's my favorite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just kind of, letting it be right now, and just kind of to going with it. And man, I think that has been really beneficial for me. Slowly but surely, day at a time, all that good stuff. I just passed 1 year on the 20th that I've been working with one of my groups that I'm in. So
good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice little celebration there for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Met a goal, which is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely is.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. Oh, having fun meeting people. I've come to the conclusion that dating is very, very difficult. Dating and trying to keep your mental health in a good place is even more difficult.
It for sure can be for a lot of different reasons. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it gets kind of crazy. I did start a new podcast with a good friend of mine from the past. My buddy Steve and I used to record a podcast together probably 10 years ago or so.
He also has a podcast called Inner City Geeks. At least they did. I think they're still publishing.
Yep. The Inner City Geeks is still going on. He also does a wrestling one.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, really interesting dude. So if anyone wants to know more about him, but
on Twitter,
he's really cool.
On Twitter, he's at Mr. Jackal.
Yes, at Mr. Jackal.
Yep.
Just a really chill dude.
Yeah.
So we were commiserating about our dating adventures, and he made the suggestion. He's like, we really should do a show on this. And like, everybody and their mother has a dating podcast. And he's like, yeah, I know, but it's not us. And I thought about it. I'm like, you're right. They aren't us. So we started the podcast. It's called Dating Insanity. And the whole premise, it's a half an hour podcast where we are talking about how we're trying to stay sane in the insanity of trying to find love. So there you go, a little teaser for you guys.
Well, the first thing you're doing wrong is if you want to find love, you clearly have to go on a TV show and get trapped in a house with people for weeks. That's the only way to find true love. We all know that.
It's so just wild. Like, okay, spoiler alert, on the second episode, we went through a list of some of the popular dating terminology that's used today. I had no idea what any of them meant.
Oh, I was going to say, I bet I'd be the same way. There's a couple I probably would know, but there's some I've heard. I don't know how many times. I still don't know what they are.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
Well, Steve and I are both like, seriously? It just was so just weird.
Yeah.
I felt like it was almost like going to the zoo and looking at another species interacting with each other, and me looking upon going, wow, that's really fascinating how they do that.
If I remember correctly, I think on an episode of Salty Language, Tony and I did that as well, where there was like a short list that I had and I was, just seeing if he would have a clue what they were or something like that. Neither one of us knew what most of them were because, we're old. So, we're not up with the hip slang that the kids use. So,
yeah, and that's kind of where we went with it. But just, yeah, so much of it just doesn't make any sense. But I ended up having a fairly, I might have been fairly good. I had a very, very nice first date with a gentleman. And the funniest part about it is, well, A, he got my sense of humor and my quirkiness. So kudos to you, sir. He actually laughed at the appropriate parts, and it wasn't like that hesitant, nervous laugh, like, is she joking? Is she trying so funny? And, it was nothing like that. Like, he got it. He got where my humor was going. So that was amazing. And when I mentioned a couple key political points, just not to talk politics, because by no means did I want to do that, but I needed to kind of make sure that we were in the same arena, shall we say. He kind of looked at me like I grew a second head when I mentioned the fact that I didn't, that I really wouldn't be well dating somebody that's more conservative than I'm at. And he just looked at me, he's like, yeah, like, duh. He's like, no, why would you date someone like that? That's not you at all. I barely know you, but I know that is not you. So why would you? I'm like, that's a very good point that I really probably should have picked up on a long time ago.
Well, that one's an easy veil because I think a lot of people for a long time were like, well, I'm open-minded, so I can date somebody who maybe doesn't have the same beliefs as me.
Yes,
and I think you've definitely seen a hard turn on that over the last few years to where most people, you see it actively in dating profiles where they'll be like, know this or know this, whether it's, right or left. Like, they just, so there is that.
Yeah, it was really refreshing and very nice to speak to someone who you really were seeing eye to eye on the majority of things, and also bringing information and new vision, new viewpoints that we hadn't looked at on ourselves. So it was very nice. It was just really nice, intellectually stimulating, yet goofy and fun conversation. So I was like, hey, this might actually be something we can see where it goes. And so the very, very first thing that, of course, I've been doing is making sure that I put on my brakes. I am not fortune telling. I am not future planning and all the other stuff. No. I am one day, one dinner, one conversation. That's it. One at a time.
Now there's your podcast name. One day, one dinner, one conversation. It's basically
That
a
is
speed
really
dating,
cool.
podcast.
Yes. So that's what's been going on with me, folks. So, guys, we're at a quandary.
We are.
We did not talk about a topic before we started this podcast.
Sure didn't.
What do we want to do?
Good question. Do you have one, Henno, or?
Yeah, we can still talk about Freudenfreude.
Yeah, let's do it.
Freudenfreude?
I thought you still had one we hadn't gotten to, so.
Yeah, I've been saving it.
Yeah, I think you got it, like, it was one you brought to the podcast when you initially joined, and we just keep back. No.
No, it's not quite that old.
Okay.
I found this great New York Times article, which will be the link will be in the show notes. It's called "The Opposite of Schadenfreude is Freudenfreude." Just the joy we derive from others' success. Basically what it is. And I didn't even, like, just the concept of it, like, was so, I just love that there's a word for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it also ties in with a term that I use with my little polycule, which is compersion, which is the opposite of jealousy. And I think compersion and Freudenfreude are two great ideas to cultivate, because it really is about getting out of yourself and focusing on somebody else and their happiness and their success and their, enjoyment of life and their growth. Because it seems like in a competitive society, it's too easy to end up in Schadenfreude, where, you are actually hoping for somebody else's, comeuppance or.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that, I think, I mean, it develops in different times for different people, but you see a lot of that in the job space,
Yeah.
because it's, there's only going to be one promotion. So everybody wants it. So you want everyone else to fail so you succeed. And that's where you take a joy in others' downfall, because you go, they're no longer a competitor, kind of a thing. And it's just an awful thing, especially like work is one thing, but it's like when you're actively cheering it, like when your friend tells you something, like, hey, I had this win, and you're just like, jealous of that win, and you're just like, about it, and it's like, That's a horrible place to be. Like, the people around you should be cheering you on and wanting you to win,
The article talks specifically about universities, and I'm like, oh, that's a great
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because grades.
Yeah, sure.
That alone, especially if, your classmates or if you're a team process or whatever it is. There's a lot of fun stuff in this article. Like there's a training. It's Freudenfreude enhancement training, or FET. And one of the things that they practice is shoy, or otherwise the sharing joy.
Right. I just picture them writing this article, and they're just sitting there with like, note cards or blocks with the words on it. Like, how can we cram these together?
It's really neat because it talks about getting inviting your friend to share the good news or their experience, and have them open up with you. And it's almost like people don't want to talk about their successes because they don't want to brag.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, how awesome is if somebody encourages you to actually come out with it and talk about how excited you were or how proud you are of yourself.
Right.
Or how, because, self-centered pride is different than being proud of oneself and your wins.
Yeah.
Well, totally different deal.
And we, like you said, we should be able to celebrate our wins with our friends. That's how that should work. If you call me and tell me, hey man, I just this, and I'm going to be like, awesome, like let's go, like I'm not going, it doesn't happen to me. So, it's like, because I've said it on here before, and I think we all feel this way. Is, if you look around at your friends and every time you celebrate a victory, if they're not cheering with you, they're not your friends. They're really not, because you really should want, like I that's one of the things where, I've really tried to be that way in general. Like, I don't even care if I know you, if you're celebrating a win, that's awesome. I mean, unless it's a terrible thing or something, but most people, when they celebrate wins, it's like, it's cool to just be part of that and celebrate with them, rather than be, angry about it or jealous or whatever. It's like, listen, life's hard for all of us. Like, some people maybe seem like life's easier or whatever, but it's like, I wish wins on everybody. I want us all to win,
The article goes into like this should be a communal effort.
Yeah, exactly.
Individual success is a communal effort, because if you engage with your friends in this way, they will engage back with you, and if they don't, get a new friend.
Exactly.
Here's the thing. What I love about these exercises, it will let you know who you don't want to be around. Seriously, if you're the one that if you're trying to do this and you're with someone that instantly makes it about themselves, well, they're missing part of it.
Right.
It's the part where you engage your friend, you look them right in the eye and you listen to them and you don't talk about yourself for that moment, Yeah. And also, like, sharing credit for your success with others, which is something we do on this podcast all the time. That's the idea, is like, bring everybody in, because it doesn't happen, alone. I'm going to be, my 16th sobriety anniversary is going to be in about a week or so, and it is not alone.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
Most things we succeed at are not. It's why, I've always hated the pull yourself up by your bootstraps garbage, and, they're self-made. And it's like, no, they're not. No one is. There's not one person in the world that's ever been fully self-made. Someone has opened a door. Someone's helped you somewhere along the way. And it's, the more we look at it that way, it's leading with kindness, as well. And that's just the way to live. Lead with kindness, be kind to others. If they win, celebrate with them, because you don't, especially if it's a stranger, you don't know what their life was like before this win, kind of a thing, instead of hating on them because you didn't get the win, it's like, well, maybe you've gotten a bunch of other wins that they never got. You don't know where which way the scale is balanced here, If you both sat down, you might be way ahead.
Yeah. They got a good buzzword for the sharing of success, too. It's bragitude.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be success. All right.
So practicing bragitude is like sharing dessert. Both parties enjoy the sweetness of the moment, which enhances Freudenfreude for them both. Yeah. So it's bragging gratitude.
Gratitude.
Bragitude.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like that.
Yeah. I like this too, is turn into a joy spectator. Too often we think of joy passively. That you see it as something that comes to you instead of something that you can generate. But you don't have to wait. And that's really this is about cultivating joy in our lives. It's about asking your friends, like, what was great about your day today?
Yeah.
I could do, like even lead them on a little bit. Like, I could do some good news. What's going on with you this week?
Mm-hmm.
Anything, and just create the experience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
I know it's just a good reminder of a way to be in, and especially in where we are not necessarily competitive, but where there are definitely, benchmarks or metrics being involved with whether it's education or work or, like I love this with music, right? Like if somebody does something really amazing, I always want to go out of my way, and let them know that I heard that.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole article is just sets up such a wonderful way of going through our lives, and especially in places where it's this is not about like everything has to be wonderful and rosy and that kind of stuff. Like, work can be hard, but it can also be satisfying.
Yeah.
And the things that sometimes we have difficult times in life, but we can get through them, and it can feel satisfying, and it can feel that it's especially if it's something that we get to the other side of, whether it's a challenge or anything like that, is to know that you can share that with other people.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be judged for it, and no one's going to put you down for it. I think this is a great metric of like, what is your community like? What are your friendships like?
Yeah.
Do you have these elements in there? If you don't,
yeah. Well, I mean, how much does it suck when you hit a win in your life and you're looking around for somebody to high five you, and there's nobody.
Yeah.
It stinks. It's not. I mean, I don't know if it's as bad as when you're suffering a loss or a lot, and being by yourself, but it's still very lonely, and there's no need for it. Like either way, it's still cool to share a moment with somebody. Longtime like internet friend of mine, Jacob Givens, who we had on Salty Language for the Enthusiasts one time. He just recently got to go to a rock and roll camp, and he got to play with I forgot his name, one of the guys from Stone Temple Pilots. He got to play one of the guys from Soundgarden. And it was something you can tell. I'm watching his videos, and he's having a blast. And he's like my age, right? He's like mid 40s, and he's like a teenager. He's giddy, he's super excited, and I couldn't be happier for the guy. Because this is something that, like, when he posted the video saying he was going to get to go to this, he was so excited. And watching him, like, because he's the one, like, during COVID that he posted stuff about different bands where he would go back and revisit like what it was like hearing that album for the first time. And explaining it. And it was a cool idea, and he blew up on TikTok. Like, not like crazy, but he got a lot of followers in a short amount of time off of this. And seeing bands liking his post, and he's actually got to meet some of the guys from Smashing Pumpkins, which is his favorite band ever. And it's like this has led to so much cool stuff for him, and the whole time I'm just like, this is so freaking awesome. And I just I keep talking with him off and on about, like, at some point, we'll probably do another Enthusiast and have him come back, because I just want to bring him on to celebrate his wins. Just to come on and be like, dude, brag it up, because I want to hear about how cool all this stuff was, And I've never even met this guy. Like, we've known each other from Twitter rooms up 100 years ago to where we're, we talk off and on Facebook or not Facebook, Instagram and stuff. And he's just a really nice guy. And I couldn't be happier for the guy, at all. It'd be so easy for somebody to sit back and look at what he's going through and just being like, jealous of his whole thing. But even if I was jealous, it wouldn't be in a negative way. Like, I wouldn't wish it to where he couldn't go. I'd more be the type to be like, I wish I could go also. Like, it'd be sweet to share that experience together. It'd be so much fun to watch. But it's like, because, you know, Jen, you've talked about this with me in the past, how much fun it is for you to see and be with someone when they're really in their, like, full-on geek moment.
Yep.
You know, where they're just nerding out on something. Heno, you talked about it when we were at the art museum looking at the Van Gogh stuff as I was talking to you about it. You know, because I'm in a totally different place when that's going on. And I'm absolutely in my happy place, basically, you know, and it's so cool when we get to experience someone in that place. Even sitting here, like, how many times have you just noodled around on your guitar right before we start recording, Heno? And it's awesome to see that. I just love seeing you doing something you enjoy, you know, even if you were just like, I'm going to keep my fingers loose or something, you know, it's just so cool to me to see that. I've gotten to where, you know, not only have I tried to focus on celebrating my wins, but I've tried to get better about celebrating other people's wins too, you know, because there's just so much negativity thrown around at people. And like I said, it really sucks when you have a win and there's no one around to high five you. You know, like,
agree. Yeah.
you know,
I do it at work with my coworkers when we have a win.
yeah.
When we finally solve something or something's finally fixed, I will just throw my hand up there and physically high five because it makes it different.
It does. Even if that's all you do, just high five and walk on to whatever's next. It's so much different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it adds an element to it where it really, I mean, it makes it tangible.
Mm-hmm.
We nailed this.
Yep.
You know, one of my favorite, and I've said it a few times on the show in the past, one of my favorite analogies of heaven and hell. They both look identical. A really long table just laden with all this wonderful food. And there's people sitting on either side of the table, all the way down. And the difference is that the people in heaven, they have this big fork, and the people in hell have the same big fork. The people in hell are starving because their fork is too big. They can't feed themselves. The people in heaven are thriving because they still can't feed themselves, but they can feed the person across the table with their big fork. So together, they are able to survive, and that is what they want to call heaven. There you go.
Yeah, I've talked with a few people about this over the last few months about, you know, just looking outside yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Just living your life where you look outward as much as you look inward, you know, as far as you just so many people not showing and leading with kindness towards others, you know, like, I mean, I still see people. I saw somebody in the grocery store a week ago, like, yell at someone else because they were wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And they were calling them stupid and all this other stuff. And the guy was like, I'm going to chemo. And then the other guy stood there, and he could not have felt more stupid in the moment. And it was like, yeah, why does it matter to you? Like, he's not harming you. Why do you got to go out of your way to push your negativity and oppression on him? Because when it worked the other way, you got really mad. If someone was like, why aren't you wearing a mask? You got physically angry at them. Like, you know, it's the same thing. It's just the other side of the coin. And it's like, just because you feel like you're right doesn't mean someone else is wrong. You know, it's different if they actually are wrong and you are right. But because you feel you're right does not make someone wrong, you know. And, you know, but it doesn't make you right either. But, you know, like I said, I saw this and I'm just standing there and I'm just like, why are you going out of your way to put that energy out? Just walk by the guy. That's it. Just walk by him. It's the same with the internet. I see people all the time. They got to comment on every freaking political post. And it's like, you don't have to. You can just scroll. Trust me. Trust me, from a guy who used to reply to every political thing. You can move on. I've gotten really good about not jumping in on those things now. And I'll tell you what, I'm way happier about it, you know, because I'm not engaging in an argument that no one's going to win. You're just yelling at a wall. The internet is the wall. You're just yelling at that wall. And, so just when you're going out and doing stuff, it's like just lead with, helping people instead of, just lead with like helping or just at least not putting negative energy onto other people. I read that, I think I talked about it on here where they were talking about road rage and how basically, as humans, when we have anger, we have to find a place to put that anger. We physically have to put it somewhere. And with road rage, that's what a lot of people do is they put it into their driving and, which is one of the worst things you can do with it because you could seriously harm yourself or others. And I think it's similar in this is that there's some people that are whatever it is they're consuming helps keep their nerve raw. And they got to pay that forward. And instead of like, hey, this is making me miserable, I'm going to remove this from my life or step back, whether it's a friend, a cable news source, whatever, people are just so okay with having their nerves picked raw by stuff. Like, and I'm just tired of it. I'm just so sick of it that I'm noticing now, like, as things do that to me, I'm rebelling against it, like in the, like pushing it away. Like, I don't want this. I'm done with this. Like, life's too damn short, like, it's just too short to go carrying all that anger anymore. And again, coming from someone who carried anger for years, and I still do, but I try really hard not to anymore. When I get angry, I try really hard to let it go. I'm not successful at it all the time, but I try really hard, and I found that since doing that, I have been just letting go. I just so much lighter and happier. So, same with your friends. Let the anger go, let the jealousy go, celebrate their win. Because also, a lot of times when your friends win, you win too. Because how many times do people take out their friends to celebrate their big promotion or a raise? Hey, let's all go out to dinner on me. Like, you can benefit from this stuff too. So, aside from the karmic win of, just being there and all that. But sometimes you actually get real stuff too, like you get physical things as well. So yeah, anyway, I'll shut up.
No, I think that was an absolute perfect little snippet for us to talk about.
Yeah.
I like Freudenfreude. Was it?
Freudenfreude. Freudenfreude.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Jewish neighbor down the street.
No, it's Freudenfreude. Yeah.
Freudenfreude.
Yeah. It's like a couple. You have Freud and Freude.
Yeah, exactly.
You have the male and the female. It's Freudenfreude. Yeah.
Like it.
That's not how it's spelled, but yeah.
We'll go with it. Well, folks, you know what time it is. We've covered an absolute ton on this podcast. And if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, I 100% love to hear from you. And I know Brian and Hannah feel the same way. So if you would like to reach out to us, you can reach us at the Crazy Life Podcast at outlook.com is our email address. The Crazy Life Podcast.weebly.com is our website. If you would like to reach me direct, you can find, well, I'm not really on my social medias, but if you shoot an email to the email I just gave you, or if you find us on the Facebook page, which Brian will tell you about in just a moment, you can reach me there as well. And if you are interested in checking out my other podcast, which is Dating Insanity, that one, the first episode just launched. It'll be on the same feed as The Crazy Life. So wherever you found this one, you can find that one too. With that, so Heno, how can they find you?
You find me on Twitter at IdaHeno, and on the other social medias, it's Heno Heiter, and you look for me, you'll find me out there. I'm hard to find. Probably if you hashtag French Bulldogs, you'll find videos. I had a notice where it said I had a reel that had 2,500 views. And it was one I made with, it was Baby Benny and Bogart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This montage of them. And I'm like, really? 2,500?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's huge, but still, for something that I just did personally,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
you know, it has that on Instagram. I was like, oh, that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Who can not look at puppies, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Heck yeah.
yeah. I found myself looking. I look at cat videos all the time on Instagram. So I'm not above it. I love them. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Stunami. You can find this show, or I'm sorry, my other show, Salty Language, on Twitter at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. That show's not safe for work, so be careful who's around when you're listening. The last episode, you already heard me gripe about my tooth, so that was basically talked about. We talked about the Diablo 4 beta, Mandalorian, a foldable chef knife, Beavis and Butthead, Spotify's AI DJ, the One Ring, where Magic the Gathering is making a card that's a 1 of 1 of the One Ring. And when in this episode we did a bracket of Nicolas Cage roles, and we picked winners all the way through that. So if any of that sounds like fun to you, please give us a listen. And if not, well, that's okay too, I guess. No, this show can be found on Facebook at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. And we are part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check out the other shows over there. Or if you're looking for a network for your podcast, go have a talk with them. I forget anything? No? Yeah. Right. So as usual, also, if you need help, please reach out. And if, please just reach out to your friends once in a while. Just make sure they're doing okay when you can. And, I always talk about being kind. And I actually had a situation where normally, I was thinking about it the other day. Normally when I talk about the kindness thing, I'm always just like, yeah, I did this. I never talk about acts of kindness like toward me, because I got to brag about how nice I am, I inflate my ego. Anyway, so I was at GameStop and they were having trouble with their card reader and it didn't have any cash. And what I was getting was like $4 something, let's say $5, right? And I asked my brother who was standing there, I'm like, hey, can you, because he usually pays in cash. And I'm like, can you cover me and I'll PayPal you or something, And he goes, yeah, I can do that. And just as we did that, there was a guy who was standing in there talking with the store manager, and he reaches over and just hands the clerk a $5 bill. And I'm like, and he goes, I got you. And I'm like, and I don't know this guy. We had talked for a few minutes previously about, I don't remember what it was, but something, the three of us were standing around talking. And he was just, just covered my $5. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. I was like, my brother's right here. He, and he goes, I gotcha. He's like, and I was like, well, I appreciate that. I was like, that's really nice of you. And it was amazing how it's $5, but it gave me even now I still feel kind of warm about it. Like it was just a nice move to do something like that. And it reminds me also of, I saw a post on Twitter, I think it was a few weeks ago, that I love this idea, which was, how a lot of people like to, they're at Starbucks or whatever, they like to pay for the person behind them or whatever. They mentioned instead of doing that, to call your local school and see if there's a kid with debt, like lunch debt.
Yeah, the lunch debt,
and
yeah.
pay toward their lunch debt, which shouldn't exist in the first place, but I'm not going to get off on that tangent. But I was like, that's so much. I mean, as nice as it is to pay off someone's coffee, that's so much of a I love that so much too. Neither one's wrong, right? Like I was always raised that you can't go wrong doing right. That's how I was raised. You put out that good karma, and whatever happens after that is not on you. You've done good. You've tried to be kind and help or whatever. And I strongly live with that. So, but I thought that was a good idea. One last thing about kindness here is I listened to a podcast. I can't remember. I think it was Hidden Brain. And he had a guest on there, and she was talking about how when people are kind, that they were measuring the metrics of it about how people are kind outside of their tribe, whether it's women to women or whites to whites, blacks to blacks, however, whatever your tribe happens to be, And she said that they don't count something as a good deed if it's within your tribe. That it only counts when you go outside your tribe. Because like she said, if a friend of hers calls, like she's a scientist, and she says, if a friend of hers calls and says, hey, can my son come study at your laboratory? She's like, I'll go, of course, because it's my friend. She's like, but if a stranger asked me, would I do it? And she goes, so now I need to go, okay, well, I want to balance this out. So now I'm talking to my university about, can we set up a program where someone from the outside can come in that I don't know, basically. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It is so much easier to help a friend, right? Most of the time. Like if your friend says, hey, I need $5, most of the time, oh, yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'll cover your lunch, whatever. If some random stranger needs $5, though, how many times would we give $5? We all would probably like to think we would every time. And again, forgetting whether money being an object in this, but it's just, would you do it? And I think a lot of people, there were other people standing in that GameStop that didn't offer me $5. I didn't need it, but no one else offered. That one guy did, so he went outside. Now, if in fairness, we're both men, we're both white. So, technically we're still of the same tribe, and we're both geeks. So, but, I just thought that was an interesting thing for like some good food for thought, is to when you're doling out your kindness, make sure you don't turn a blind eye to someone who's not like you. All right, I'm good.
All right, everybody, we'll go out there and have the absolute best week that you can. And never, ever, ever forget, always be wiggling those toes.